It was July 10, 2015, when Jessica Mitchell and her boyfriend, Vernal DeOr Kunz Sr., decided to spend a weekend in the Idaho wilderness, bringing along their 2-year-old son, DeOr Kunz Jr. Their destination was Timber Creek Campground, a remote and quiet area near the Salmon Chalice National Forest, where time seems to slow down and silence thickens among the trees. With them were also the child's grandfather, Robert Walton, and a family friend, Jaliek Rainwalker. It was a typical camping trip, filled with campfires, fresh air, and that deep peace only nature can provide. No one, not even for a moment, could have imagined that this trip would turn into an unsolved mystery. Around 2:35 p.m., little DeOr appeared to have vanished into thin air. According to the parents' statements, they were preparing for a walk and assumed the child had stayed with his grandfather. But Robert Walton, for his part, believed the boy was with his parents. Just a few minutes of confusion were enough to realize that no one actually knew where DeOr was. The forest around them was vast, intricate, and hostile, full of hidden streams, steep slopes, and inaccessible areas. The search began immediately. Authorities were alerted, helicopters flew over the area, and search dogs were brought in. But there was no trace of the child, no discarded clothing, no tiny footprints in the mud, nothing. In the following days, the entire county joined the search. Hundreds of volunteers combed every corner of the forest, even the roughest terrain. But as the hours passed, so did hope, and cracks began to form in the story. The accounts given by the parents did not always match. Details shifted, small inconsistencies in their narratives that, when pieced together, created a sense of uncertainty. Some investigators began asking questions. How could a 2-year-old wander off alone in such a dangerous area without anyone noticing? And why couldn't the search dogs pick up even a trace of his scent? The community, initially united in support, began to split. Some believed it was a tragic accident, while others whispered darker theories. Meanwhile, the family often appeared on television, pleading for their child's return. But something in their behavior puzzled investigators, enough that, in the months that followed, both Jessica and Vernal were named persons of interest in the case. However, they were never formally charged with any crime. The investigation continued, though progress slowed. The FBI, which joined the case in an effort to shed light on what happened, found no conclusive evidence pointing to either an accident or a crime. Every lead seemed to dissolve into nothing, just like DeOr had. Some local experts ruled out the possibility of an animal attack, noting the complete absence of signs of a struggle or blood. Others suggested the child might have been kidnapped, but the isolated location of the campsite made that scenario unlikely as well. The only certainty was the void the little boy left behind. No body, no belongings, no clues. Only hypotheses, questions, and a long string of what-ifs. As the years passed, the mystery only deepened. Photos of DeOr, with his blonde hair and light eyes, remained on billboards throughout Idaho, while time marched on. Some private investigators hired by the family eventually withdrew from the case, saying they could no longer support the parents' version of events. That, too, fueled suspicion. Yet, without evidence, there are no culprits, only questions. Questions that, to this day, remain unanswered. It was the night of October 3, 2011, in Kansas City, Missouri. The air was still warm, with autumn slowly creeping in among the dry leaves and lengthening shadows. Inside a house on North Lister Avenue, 10-month-old Lisa Irwin slept in her crib, unaware of the storm about to consume her world. Her mother, Deborah Bradley, said she had put Lisa to bed around 10:30 p.m. Then, exhausted, she also fell asleep. When the father, Jeremy Irwin, returned home from a night shift around 4:00 a.m., he found the lights on, the door open, and the crib empty. Lisa was gone. Panic spread in seconds. Jeremy called 911 at 4:00 a.m. His voice was full of anxiety. "My baby's been kidnapped." So began one of the largest and most mysterious missing child investigations in Missouri's recent history. Police arrived immediately, and within hours the entire neighborhood was locked down. Officers searched every home, alley, and wooded area nearby. But time passed, and Lisa seemed to have disappeared without a trace. There were no signs of forced entry, no screams in the night, no eyewitnesses, just an empty crib, and a deafening silence. In those early frantic hours, a disturbing detail emerged. 3 of the family's cell phones were missing. No one knew where they had gone, as if someone had deliberately taken them. That same night, a mysterious call was made from one of those phones to an unknown number. When investigators traced the call, they discovered it was linked to a woman who, reportedly, had no known connection to the family. The lead remained unresolved, never fully explained. Deborah later admitted in interviews that she had drunk a few glasses of wine that evening and had fallen into a deep sleep. The media began to focus on her behavior, the gaps in her memory, and the difficulty she had reconstructing exactly what had happened. Some investigators expressed doubt about the consistency of her story. There was talk of a failed lie detector test and contradictions that piled up day by day. The media pressure became suffocating, and the parents' home turned into a hub for TV crews, onlookers, and private detectives. In the midst of all this, reports started coming in from all over the country. Some claimed to have seen Lisa in Texas. Others swore they had encountered her in Florida. One of the most discussed sightings came from India, where a girl resembling Lisa was seen with an American couple. But every lead quickly fell apart. DNA tests, photo comparisons, cross-checks, everything led to a dead end. The blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl seemed to have vanished like mist in the sun. Authorities have never formally charged anyone. Despite intense interrogations and the many theories that have surfaced over the years, there was never enough evidence to go to trial. Jeremy and Deborah have always denied any involvement, maintaining that their daughter was kidnapped. Over time, however, public interest faded. The posters faded, the candles from vigils burned out, and the balloons left outside the house became quiet remnants of a hope slowly eroding. Lisa Irwin remains one of the most well-known missing children in America. Her photos, taken before that night, are still posted in missing persons databases, alongside age-progressed images showing what she might look like today. And while her room remains frozen in time, the question that still haunts everyone is the same. What really happened that night? It was May 11, 2011, when 6-year-old Timothy Pitzen was picked up from school by his mother, Amy Fry Pitzen. On the surface, it seemed like an ordinary day, but something in her actions revealed a sense of urgency. She told school staff there was a family emergency, and without any suspicion or resistance, she left the building with her son. From that moment on, their story became an enigmatic journey, marked by mysterious stops, anonymous hotels, and blurry images caught by surveillance cameras. Mother and son were seen together in various locations across Illinois. Happy, relaxed. A day at an amusement park, a visit to the zoo, a night in a hotel. It seemed like a spontaneous little vacation, a gesture of maternal love. But beneath that surface of normalcy, something deeply unsettling was taking shape. On May 13th, 2 days after their disappearance, Amy was found dead in a motel room in Rockford, Illinois. She had left behind 3 letters. In one, handwritten and addressed to her family, she claimed that Timothy was safe, that he was with people who would take good care of him, and that he would never be found. Her words were cold, precise, calculated. No information about where the boy was or with whom. Just that chilling sentence. No one will ever find him. The room showed no signs of a struggle, no trace of the child, just personal items, a Bible, and the invisible tears of a mystery that had just begun. Authorities began to reconstruct the path taken in the 2 days prior. Surveillance footage showed Timothy holding his mother's hand as they entered a resort, then in a candy shop, then in the parking lot of a water park. But after May 13th, no more images, no witnesses, nothing. The boy seemed to have vanished off the face of the earth. Investigators examined Amy's car and found traces of grass and soil suggesting she had stopped in a rural area not accounted for in her known movements. There was talk of a quarry, an isolated field, a dirt road used only by tractors. But every search turned up nothing. No footprints, no witnesses, only speculation and sorrow. As the years passed, the case took on increasingly surreal overtones. In 2019, a 14-year-old boy was found wandering in Kentucky. He claimed to be Timothy Pitzen, saying he had escaped from 2 men who had held him captive for years. For a moment, hope filled the air. News outlets lit up. Newspapers revisited the case, and the family held their breath. But then came the DNA results. It wasn't him. He was a young man with mental health issues, already known to authorities, and his story collapsed under the weight of harsh reality. Timothy, meanwhile, remains a photograph etched into the collective memory. A boy with light eyes, a bright smile, and a childhood cut short by one last car ride with his mother. Today, digitally aged images attempt to show what he might look like as a teenager, but each rendering is only a guess. No physical trace of him has ever been found, no solid clue. Only that letter, Amy's final message, still echoing like a painful riddle. He is safe. No one will ever find him. It was the night between February 13th and 14th, 2000, in the quiet town of Shelby, North Carolina. Heavy rain fell, and the wind rattled the window panes. Inside their home, the Degree family slept. Harold and Aquila, loving and attentive parents, had tucked their 2 children into bed as usual. O'Brien, the older brother, and Asha, their 9-year-old daughter. It was Sunday night. The next day would be Valentine's Day, and Asha, shy and responsible, had spent the afternoon at home, relaxing after a basketball game that hadn't gone as she'd hoped. Around 8:30 p.m., she turned off the lights in the bedroom she shared with her brother. Everything seemed normal. But in a few short hours, the Degree family's world would be shattered, quietly and without warning. Around 2:30 a.m., Harold woke up to check on the children. He saw both of them sleeping in their beds. Nothing seemed unusual. But when Aquila went to wake them at 6:30 a.m. to get ready for school, Asha's bed was empty. The covers were neatly folded. There were no signs of forced entry or broken windows. Just a closed door and an inexplicable silence. After the first moments of panic, the mother called the police. Thus began a frantic search, driven by hope and fueled by fear. A 9-year-old girl had disappeared in the middle of the night, leaving behind only questions. That morning, unsettling details emerged. 2 motorists reported seeing a young girl walking alone along Highway 18 around 4 o'clock a.m. She was wearing light-colored pants, a long-sleeved shirt, and was carrying a bag. A surreal sight, in the darkness and the pouring rain. When one of the drivers tried to approach and offer help, the girl panicked and ran into the woods. No one knew what she was doing there or why she had left her house voluntarily. The relentless rain had washed away any trace, making the search dog's task nearly impossible. 3 days later, investigators found some of Asha's belongings in an abandoned shed a few miles from her home. There were candy wrappers, a pencil, a hair bow, but nothing that explained where she had gone or why. The discovery felt like a message left behind in time, a trail that suddenly ended with no direction. Years later, in 2001, came an even more chilling discovery. Her school backpack was found, sealed inside a trash bag and buried along a highway construction site in Burke County. It was more than 30 miles from Shelby, far too far for a 9-year-old girl to travel alone in the night. Every new clue only seemed to deepen the mystery. Authorities found no evidence of abuse or trouble at home. No credible suspects, no clear motive. It seemed as if Asha had left of her own free will. But why? One theory suggested she had been inspired by a book read at school, in which a girl runs away and has an adventure on her own. But in the real world, there was no happy ending. No phone calls, no confirmed sightings. Only emptiness. And the image of a little girl with neat braids and wide eyes vanished into the darkness. Asha Degree has never been found. Her disappearance remains one of the most baffling cases in the United States. Every year, on February 14th, her family organizes a walk to keep public attention on the case. They walk along the same road where she was last seen. Maybe, someday, somewhere, someone will remember something. But until that day comes, there is only the mystery and the silence Asha left behind. It was June 4th, 2010, and Portland, Oregon was waking up to what seemed like an ordinary early summer day. School was nearly out for the year. The air was mild, and the clear sky promised another peaceful day. That morning, 7-year-old Kyron Horman woke up full of excitement. Skyline Elementary School was hosting a science fair, and he was proud of his project on tree frogs. He wore a CSI t-shirt and his glasses, which gave him the look of a little scientist. His stepmother, Terry Moulton Horman, drove him to school as usual. They arrived around 8 a.m. Together they walked through the hallways, looking at other students' projects, and even took a photo of Kyron standing in front of his display board. It is the last known image of the boy. A shy smile, curious eyes, unaware that within moments he would vanish without a trace. At 8:45 a.m., Terry said she left Kyron near his classroom and watched him walk toward it. However, according to the teachers, Kyron never showed up for class. When his biological mother, Desiree Young, and his father, Kyron Horman, arrived at the school bus stop at 3:30 p.m. and realized Kyron had never gotten on the bus, panic set in immediately. The school staff was questioned right away. No one recalled seeing Kyron after 9 a.m. The school had not marked him absent, and no one notified the parents until that afternoon. It was as if the boy had been swallowed by an invisible crack in the walls of the school. Authorities launched one of the largest search efforts in Oregon's history. Volunteers, search dogs, helicopters, and divers combed every inch of the surrounding area, but nothing emerged. No trace. No items left behind. No witnesses who could definitively say they saw him leaving the school. Discrepancies began to surface. Terry's cell phone was analyzed. Data showed that between 9 and 10 a.m., instead of being at home as she claimed, she was in a remote rural area. She said she had gone for a drive to calm a headache. But why lie? Weeks passed and media pressure intensified. Authorities never officially named a suspect, but public scrutiny focused heavily on Terry. Some family friends reported that she often complained about Kyron, and that the relationship between them was strained. Then, a twist. Kyron's father, Kane, moved out of the house with their younger daughter and obtained a restraining order against Terry. He claimed that law enforcement had informed him of an alleged plot by Terry to have him killed, using a former landscaper as a go-between. The investigation never led to charges, but it deepened the suspicion. Despite interrogations, tips, and rewards, the case remained shrouded in mystery. There was never a confession, no body, not a single piece of evidence that could explain what really happened on June 4th. The image of Kyron, smiling in his detective t-shirt, remains etched in the minds of all who followed the case. A little boy who vanished in broad daylight from a public school, in front of everyone and no one. On November 1st, 2007, in the quiet heart of the small town of Greenwich in upstate New York, a 12-year-old boy vanished into thin air. His name was Jaliek Rainwalker. It was a day like any other, but nothing would ever be the same again. Jaliek wasn't an ordinary child. His early life had been marked by immense hardship. Born to a mother struggling with substance use and abandoned at a young age, he had lived in various foster homes before being officially adopted by Stephen Kerr and Jocelyn McDonald. But the past Jaliek carried within him wasn't easy to manage. He had episodes of anger, emotional confusion, and always seemed to be searching for a safe place where he could truly feel protected. On the night he disappeared, Jaliek was staying at his adoptive father's home in Greenwich, while his mother and the other children were elsewhere. Stephen Kerr claimed that Jaliek had gone to bed as usual the night before, and that when he woke up around 7 a.m., the boy was gone. He said he found a note written by Jaliek in which the boy stated he wanted to start a new life, apologizing for being a burden to the family. But even from that very first detail, something didn't quite add up. The idea that a 12-year-old could plan and carry out a solo escape, leaving behind such a well-written note, quickly raised doubts among investigators. Authorities immediately launched a search. Woods, rivers, and rural roads around the area were scoured for days, but Jaliek seemed to have vanished. No clues, no witnesses, no useful surveillance footage. Meanwhile, cracks began to appear in Kerr's story. He initially said he had slept in the same room as Jaliek, but later changed his version, saying they were in separate rooms. Kerr's cell phone was turned off for several hours during the night of the disappearance, and oddly, it was later turned on in an area far from where he claimed to be. At 4:34 a.m., a voicemail was recorded on his phone from a location different than the home, a detail that cast further shadows on the story. As the months went by, authorities reclassified the case. What began as a missing person investigation officially became a suspicious disappearance. A thorough search was conducted of the adoptive father's home and vehicle, but no decisive evidence was found. Kerr and his wife refused to take a polygraph test. They repeatedly stated they believed Jaliek was still alive and had simply chosen to run away. However, no one has seen him since. No confirmed sightings, no contact. Time passed, and hope gave way to silence. In 2012, an age progression image was released, showing what Jaliek might look like as he got older, in an attempt to reignite public interest. The reward for any helpful information was increased to $25,000, but no substantial leads ever came in. The feeling, growing more palpable with each year, is one of an unresolved puzzle surrounded by omissions, silences, and too many unanswered questions. And deep in the woods of Greenwich, the mystery of Jaliek Rainwalker continues to breathe, unseen, unresolved. It was a warm summer morning in Chicago, July 6, 2001, when the mother of Tianda and Diamond Bradley left the house to go to work. They lived in the Lake Grove Village apartment complex on the city's south side, where children often played in the courtyard under the watchful eyes of neighbors. Tianda was 10 years old, and her little sister Diamond was only 3. That morning, their mother, Tracy Bradley, left the girls in the apartment, telling them not to go out and that she would be back soon. When she returned a few hours later, the apartment was empty. There was no trace of Tianda or Diamond. The door was locked from the inside, but a note, presumably written by Tianda, was left on the kitchen table. It said that she and her sister had gone for a walk to the store and then to the park. But that note didn't reassure their mother. Something felt wrong. The handwriting, the tone, the content, none of it seemed right. Tracy immediately called the police. The next few hours were chaotic. As law enforcement began scouring the neighborhood, rumors started to spread. No one had seen the 2 girls leave the house that morning. No neighbors, no passers-by. It was as if they had vanished. Investigators launched a massive search, involving K-9 units, helicopters, and hundreds of volunteers. Photos of the girls began to appear everywhere. Their disappearance deeply shook the entire city. But despite the huge effort, nothing surfaced. No witnesses, no useful camera footage, no evidence. Detectives began focusing on the note. Handwriting experts suggested it was possible Tianda had written it, but one disturbing detail remained. At just 10 years old, would she really have decided to take her 3-year-old sister outside without telling anyone, leaving behind such a precise message? Some family members said Tracy would never have allowed the girls to go out alone. Other witnesses said that, in the days leading up to their disappearance, Tianda had confided in someone that she was afraid of someone, but it was never clear who that person was. As weeks passed, the idea of an abduction began to take shape, though no concrete evidence emerged. Every time there seemed to be a breakthrough, the trail went cold. There were reports from other states, anonymous letters, and phone calls. One day, a woman claimed to have seen 2 girls resembling them in a parking lot in New Mexico, but that lead too turned out to be a dead end. Meanwhile, the Bradley family found itself suspended in limbo. The empty house, untouched beds, and toys left behind were all frozen reminders of a broken moment. Each anniversary of their disappearance reopened that summer day, like a wound that refused to heal. In 2021, 20 years after their disappearance, a woman came forward online claiming to be Tianda, but after thorough investigation, it was confirmed she was not. Once again, the illusion of hope gave way to silence. It was January 23, 1999, when the quiet city of Tacoma, in the state of Washington, was shaken by an event that remains an unsolved mystery to this day. That evening, little Teekah Lewis, a 2.5-year-old girl, was at the New Frontier Lanes bowling alley with her mother and other family members. The place was crowded and noisy, filled with artificial lights and families enjoying their night out. Shortly after 10:30 p.m., Teekah was playing with a coin-operated toy car just a few feet away from her mother, while the rest of the family focused on their bowling games. In a single moment, everything changed. Her mother turned away for just a few seconds, and when she looked back, Teekah was gone. Confusion quickly turned to panic. Her mother, Teresa, began calling the child's name frantically, searching between the lanes and down the hallways, while others joined in to help. But despite the quick response, the little girl had seemingly vanished into thin air. Police arrived shortly after, but those critical first moments had already passed. No surveillance cameras were directly pointed at the play area where Teekah had been, a detail that would heavily weigh on the investigation. Witnesses gave scattered statements, but one in particular reported seeing a man kneeling beside a girl who looked like Teekah just before she went missing. He was described as a white or Hispanic male, with curly reddish-brown hair, between 30 and 40 years old, approximately 6 feet tall. Another key detail was the suspicious presence of a red 1990s Pontiac Grand Am, seen speeding out of the back parking lot of the bowling alley right around the time of her disappearance. Search efforts began immediately. Teams of volunteers, search dogs, helicopters. But no concrete clues were ever found. No sign of Teekah in the woods, streets, or rivers nearby. Authorities treated the case as a likely abduction, but no suspect was ever identified with solid evidence. The mother was questioned multiple times and fully cooperated with the investigation. The family members who were present that night were also interviewed. Every lead, however, ended in a dead end. In the years that followed, tips came in from across the United States. Some people claimed to have seen a young woman resembling the missing child, but each sighting was investigated, and none led to Teekah. In 2019, a woman in Texas caught the attention of Teekah's mother, who believed she might be her daughter. But after DNA testing, the possibility was definitively ruled out. The bowling alley where it all happened has since been demolished, but the case remains open. Tacoma police continue to receive information and emphasize that even the smallest detail could make a difference. And as time goes on, the name Teekah Lewis remains etched in the memory of a community that has never forgotten the sudden silence of that winter night. The morning of April 29, 2003 in Nashville seemed like any ordinary day when 13-year-old Tabitha Tuders, a petite girl with sandy blonde hair and blue eyes, left her house at 7:50 a.m. to catch her school bus just a few steps away, at the corner of Boscobel and 14th Streets. She had never acted out or shown signs of wanting to run away from the people who loved her. She was a bright student, loved singing in the church choir, and was always close to her mother, Deborah, even sleeping at the foot of her parents' bed the night before she vanished. At 7:50 a.m., she arrived at the first stop but didn't find any other kids, so she walked on to the next one. That small, innocent decision changed everything. Tabitha never got on the bus, never arrived at school, and has not been seen or heard from since. Around 4:10 p.m., her mother returned home to find only silence. No reply at the door, no sign of her daughter. The anxiety took shape the moment she realized Tabitha had missed her routine, something she had never done before. Investigations began immediately. Detectives found $20 and the house key in Tabitha's room, but no bag, no packed belongings. The theory of a runaway was quickly dismissed by the family. In her room, cryptic notes surfaced: TDT, N, MTL, initials that were never explained or connected to any known individuals. A potential breakthrough came when a young boy reported seeing Tabitha getting into a red car between 14th and 15th Streets. The driver was described as an African-American male wearing a cap. The car reversed and drove away. There was no screaming, no signs of struggle, just a shadow on a street that had always seemed familiar, now transformed into the center of a mystery. Search dogs traced her scent from one of her dolls directly to the area described by the witness, reinforcing his credibility. Neighbors later said they saw her kneeling on the sidewalk holding something, perhaps her school assignment from the day before. The emotional tension tightened. A girl who would never willingly go with a stranger, and yet something, or someone, had stopped her on her daily path. In the following months, new threads of tension emerged. A potential suspect lived just 4 miles away and had a history of offenses against minors. He passed a polygraph test, but remained a person of interest. There were also whispers about a high school chat room that was erased before any digital trace could be recovered. No evidence, just a void filled with questions. Later in 2003, there were unconfirmed sightings in southern Indiana, a girl resembling Tabitha with a man and a teenage girl at a rest stop. Vague descriptions, haunted eyes, a sense of fear. A year later, police searched an isolated property in Hickman County, a decaying structure surrounded by woods where a suspect once lived. Nothing was recovered. Other searches in fields, garages, and abandoned buildings all ended the same. Time passed like a silent thief. On February 10, 2016, a new witness claimed the car was actually green, driven by a man known as Juan, who had been mentioned in early phases of the investigation. But that lead fell apart too. Conflicting details, exaggerations, verified alibis. Meanwhile, the family kept the case alive. Posters, t-shirts, local interviews, never surrendering to despair. In 2020, police announced they were exploring new theories, possible use of sedatives, and links to human trafficking in the Dickerson Road and Trinity Lane area. Warrants were issued to search land and vehicles. That summer, a 7-acre property in Hickman County was combed through. Again, nothing. The details of that search remain sealed, but the sense lingers that every stone could hide a fragment of truth. To this day, the case remains open, handled by the Nashville Metro Cold Case Unit and the FBI, which offers a $50,000 reward for information leading to Tabitha's recovery and the arrest of those responsible. Government websites, missing persons databases, and age-progressed images continue to keep her face in the public eye, a 13-year-old girl who left home on an ordinary morning and never returned. It was June 9, 1995, a summer day that began like many others in the small town of Alma, Arkansas. Morgan Nick, a 6-year-old girl, had gone to a baseball game with her father and some friends. The field, bathed in warm afternoon light, was crowded with families, children, and sports fans. Morgan, with her wide, curious eyes, ran happily between the bleachers and the green grass, unaware that the day was about to turn into an endless nightmare. Around 5:30 p.m., while playing with a group of kids near the dugout, Morgan briefly stepped away, leaving the play area. It was the last time anyone saw her. When Morgan didn't return to her friends, the alarm was raised immediately. Those present began searching frantically through the rows of chairs in the surrounding areas as worry quickly escalated. Police were alerted within minutes, and search teams began scouring the field, nearby roads, and the surrounding woods. Every corner was searched, every detail examined. But there was no trace of Morgan. Hours turned into days, and the hope of finding her safe grew increasingly fragile. Her family and the community rallied around the little girl, seeking help at a national level. Morgan Nick's disappearance became one of the most publicized missing child cases in the United States. Her image was broadcast everywhere, on television, in newspapers, and through emotional public appeals. Every anonymous call or tip was carefully investigated, but none led to concrete results. Investigators closely examined the people present that day, and dozens of witnesses were interviewed, but the mystery remained dense. Authorities considered the possibility of an abduction by a stranger, while the family feared the worst, without ever giving in to despair. Over the years, Morgan's case has seen various developments. Searches were conducted in distant and remote places, aided by specialized teams and advanced technology. In 2008, a DNA test was performed on a woman who believed she might be Morgan, but results confirmed no match. Other sightings and leads turned out to be false alarms, but no one ever forgot the face of the little girl who still seems to ask for justice. Today, nearly 30 years after the disappearance, decisive evidence seems to be emerging. After almost 30 years, a suspect has been identified: Billy Jack Links. Links, who died in prison in 2000, had been previously questioned in 1995, but only recently have new DNA analyses provided crucial evidence. A blonde hair found in a red van belonging to Links, matching the description of a vehicle seen near the playground at the time of Morgan's disappearance, showed a strong indication that Morgan had been in that van. This DNA analysis was conducted by Othram Labs, a laboratory specializing in forensic genetic genealogy. Morgan disappeared while playing with friends, chasing fireflies. Her family never stopped searching for her, and the identification of Links as a suspect, based on direct evidence, marks a major breakthrough in the case. Links was already known to authorities, and about 2 months after Morgan's disappearance, he attempted to abduct another minor. On March 10, 2005, a 13-year-old girl named Bianca Noel B. Piper mysteriously disappeared in Foley, a small community in Missouri. That evening, around 6:15 p.m., Bianca's mother, Shannon Tanner, dropped her off on McIntosh Hill Road, a gravel road about a mile from their home. Bianca had argued with her mother about chores, and following advice from her therapist, she was allowed to go for a walk to calm down. However, that walk turned into a disappearance that has never been explained. Bianca suffered from ADHD and bipolar disorder, conditions that required regular treatment. When she didn't take her medication, she could become disoriented and sometimes experienced hallucinations. The night she went missing, she was wearing a lime green t-shirt, a gray Adidas hoodie, blue jeans, and white sneakers. She also carried a flashlight. Despite immediate searches by both her family and law enforcement, no trace of Bianca was ever found. Initial investigations suggested that Bianca might have gotten lost while walking home. However, as time passed and no concrete evidence surfaced, authorities began to suspect a possible abduction. Bianca had never shown any signs of wanting to run away, and her family was not considered involved in her disappearance. Over the years, several developments emerged, including a 2023 search of a septic tank near where she was last seen, but nothing significant was discovered. In the years that followed, the community and law enforcement worked tirelessly to keep attention on the case. The family organized awareness events and social media campaigns, gathering tips from across the country. In 2019, authorities also released an age-progressed image of Bianca, showing how she might look today in hopes of sparking new leads. Additionally, the area around McIntosh Hill Road, a rural and isolated location, was searched multiple times with the help of K9 units and drones, but without success. Bianca's disappearance has echoed beyond Foley, drawing attention from national television programs focused on unsolved cases and groups dedicated to missing persons. The case remains an intricate mystery with many unanswered questions. Why didn't Bianca make it home that evening? What circumstances could have led to her disappearance in a place so close to home? Her story has become a powerful reminder of the fragile balance between mental health and personal safety, and how crucial it is to remain vigilant, even in small communities. Today, Bianca would be a young woman, but her absence continues to weigh like a silent shadow. Authorities continue to appeal to the public, because even the smallest detail might be the key to bringing Bianca home.